The void stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent, but tonight it seemed to lean closer, as though the universe itself strained to listen. Suspended within Earth's orbit loomed the Aegis Eternal, humanity's most audacious creation, a warship so vast that even the lights of cities far below flickered in its shadow. For decades, it had existed only as rumor, whispered about in council chambers and classified reports. Now, unveiled at last, it was more than steel and circuits. It was a statement. Humanity was no longer fractured tribes scrabbling for survival. Humanity was one, and it had built a titan. Captain Elena Vera stood at the observation deck, the curve of Earth reflected in her eyes. She was lean, with features carved by long campaigns and deep space patrols, the kind of commander chosen not for charm, but for unyielding steadiness. Her hand rested lightly on the railing, though her posture betrayed none of the turmoil beneath her uniform. Every nation had contributed to this vessel, but it was she who bore the weight of guiding it into the unknown. A single miscalculation could collapse the fragile unity humanity had stitched together. Behind her, Commander Arjun Hale approached, his footsteps deliberate. Where Vera's strength lay in patience, Hale carried a soldier's sharpness, each word delivered like a blade. He had served in orbital conflicts during Earth's final wars, scars across his forearms testifying to battles fought in environments where no mercy existed. "The crew is restless," he said without preamble. "They've heard the rumors. First mission, and it's not a patrol. It's them." His hesitation spoke volumes. Vera turned. "You disapprove." "I distrust," Hale corrected. "Alien summons to a council? A meeting in some artificial system beyond our borders? It smells like a trap." His jaw tightened as though the word itself tasted bitter. "And we're walking and carrying not a branch, but the biggest weapon humanity's ever forged." Before Vera could answer, the door parted, and Sorendale entered with the air of someone stepping into a performance. He was the appointed diplomat, his silver-threaded robes a deliberate contrast to the stark uniforms of the command deck. Where Hale was all rigid edges, Dale flowed, voice melodic, gestures subtle, words chosen to soothe. "Perception is the currency of interstellar politics," he began, spreading his hands. "And the Aegis Eternal is a fortune. They will see strength, not aggression. A shield, not a sword." Hale scoffed. "Or they'll see a threat. A weapon we intend to use the moment they blink wrong." Dale smiled, unoffended. "Which is why I'm here. To remind them humanity carries more than weapons. We carry stories, art, hope. That is what will line us a seat at their table." Vera listened, weighing both sides. She knew their arguments were not simply about tactics. They represented the twin faces of humanity, caution carved by centuries of conflict, and ambition sharpened by dreams of belonging to something greater. Both lived within her crew. Both lived within her. Chief Engineer Rico Tan's voice crackled through the comm, urgent and irreverent. "Captain, reactors are humming like old songs. We're ready to punch a hole in the stars whenever you give the word. But fair warning, once we make this jump, there's no quick retreat. We either guests or ghosts." The reminder struck the bridge like a silent gong. Humanity's survival was balanced precariously on this voyage. Earth was no longer the fractured wasteland it had once been, but its recovery was fragile, dependent on alliances, on trade, on something beyond self-reliance. Too many remembered the resource wars that had burned oceans and shattered nations. Too many feared that humanity's aggression, once turned outward, would bring annihilation instead of salvation. The Aegis Eternal was not merely a ship. It was a covenant. Within its armored heart lived 200,000 souls, scientists, marines, families, and children whose laughter echoed faintly through its cavernous halls. They were not passengers. They were proof that this mission was not an expedition, but an exodus. Wherever humanity went, it would go together. Vera looked from Hale to Dale, their arguments circling like opposing tides. She could not choose between suspicion and hope. She would carry both into the unknown. Her voice, calm yet firm, cut through the debate. "This ship is not built to conquer. It is built to endure. If the galaxy fears us, so be it. If it welcomes us, better still. But we will not bow. Not again. Not ever." The bridge crew straightened at her words, their doubts quelled if only for the moment. Even Hale inclined his head, his resistance tempered by loyalty. From the viewing port, Earth glowed with familiar blues and greens, fragile yet defiant. For countless centuries, it had been humanity's prison and cradle both. Now, with the Titan forged from its lost reserves of unity, Earth whispered a single command. Go. Vera raised a hand. Engage FTL. The hum of reactors rose into a crescendo, light crawling across the ship's frame like veins igniting. The stars outside blurred, stretched, and fractured into brilliance. A silence fell upon the crew, not of fear, but of collective breath held at the edge of destiny. For an instant, Vera thought of the ancient sailors who once braved uncharted oceans with nothing but sails and faith. How small their vessels must have seemed, and yet how vast their courage. Now she commanded a Titan, and the ocean before her was the galaxy itself. The Aegis Eternal vanished into the dark, leaving Earth behind, carrying with it all the hope and all the dread of an entire species. Somewhere ahead lay civilizations older than humanity could imagine, and a council that would decide whether humanity was to be recognized as kin or condemned as contagion. No one on the bridge spoke. There was nothing to say. The voyage had begun, and the galaxy, whether it welcomed or rejected them, would soon have no choice but to acknowledge that humanity had arrived. The stars reassembled themselves as the Aegis Eternal tore free of its first great jump. For a moment, there was only silence on the bridge, the crew blinking against the afterimage of distorted light. Then the view resolved, and gasps rippled across the consoles. Suspended before them was no natural star system, but a work of deliberate, ancient craft. At its heart blazed a manufactured sun, a sphere of burning plasma confined by colossal structures that drank its energy. Around it orbited concentric rings, vast enough to cradle continents, glittering with habitats, docks, and fortresses. Ships of every conceivable shape and hue drifted in orderly patterns, traffic lanes alive with the motion of dozens of civilizations converging. Humanity had crossed the threshold into another order of existence. Captain Vera allowed herself only a breath to take it in before her tone snapped the crew back to discipline. Report. Sensors lit with activity, streams of alien signals racing into translation. Soren Dale leaned forward, his eyes bright with wonder. The Nexus, he whispered. The convocation point. Every major species is gathered. Hale's expression was a stone mask, though his hand tightened on the edge of the console. Or trapped to swallow us whole. His gaze swept the alien vessels, sleek silver crescents, organic leviathans pulsing with bioluminescence, jagged constructs bristling with spines. Compared to them, even the Titan seemed unfamiliar, an intruder that did not belong. The first Hale arrived. The universal translator, still learning, rendered the alien speech as lead tones, like crystal chimes shattering and reforming. A visage appeared on the display, insectoid, crystalline carapace refracting the manufactured sun behind it. The Tiraktoon emissary regarded them with multifaceted eyes. Humans, it said, each syllable strained through translation. You arrive with your weapon. The word dripped with disapproval. What is it you seek? Dale inclined his head, his voice smooth as silk. We seek recognition. We come not in conquest, but in unity. This vessel carries our people, our culture, and our resolve to stand as equals among the stars. The Tiraktoon's mandibles clicked in a rhythm that might have been laughter. You bring your children to the council inside a fortress. Your resolve is fear. Your unity is coercion. The transmission ended abruptly. Hale exhaled through his teeth. They see through us already. Before Vera could answer, another signal broke through, this one serene and resonant, as though spoken inside the mind. A Valorian envoy appeared, humanoid in shape but blurred at the edges, as if gravity itself bent around its form. Its voice carried patience older than nations. New children, you stand where empires crumble and species are weighed. To sit in this council is to bear responsibility. Can you bear it? Vera answered this time, her tone unyielding. We have borne war, famine, and near extinction. We endure not by strength alone, but by will. Humanity is prepared to carry its share. The envoy's blurred form shifted, perhaps in approval, perhaps in pity. We shall see. The third arrival was less patient. A Krogan Dominion warship swung into formation alongside them, its hull bristling with heavy turrets. Its commander filled the screen, reptilian bulk framed in blood-red banners. "Human vessel," he growled, voice of thunderous bass. "You bring a Titan. That is strength. We respect strength. Prove it, and the Krogan may stand beside you. Fail, and we will scatter your bones among the stars." The transmission cut, without courtesy. On the bridge, tension settled like ice. They had come seeking recognition, but every exchange revealed the same truth. Humanity's presence was not welcomed, only tolerated, and its survival depended on convincing those older, stronger, stranger powers that they belonged. Dale broke the silence. "They are testing us already. Each word, each glance, a measure of our intent. If we falter, we are branded dangerous children, unfit to stand here." Hale snapped, "If we show weakness, we're prey. If we show strength, we're a threat. Tell me, diplomat, what path do you see through that paradox?" Dale only smiled faintly, though the smile was tight. "The same path humanity has always walked, both blade and banner. We endure by refusing to be only one." As if summoned by their debate, a signal pulsed through every channel simultaneously. The council itself now spoke, a chorus of voices led in a single decree. "Humanity, you seek a place among us. But words are wind. To be recognized, you must demonstrate not your weapons, but your responsibility. You will face the trial of recognition. Succeed, and you will be counted as kin. Fail, and your world shall be quarantined, never to rise beyond its cradle." The pronouncement reverberated across the bridge. Even the hardened veterans shifted uneasily at the word quarantine. It was not execution, but it was death of another kind, cultural isolation, perpetual irrelevance, humanity locked away like a contagion. Hale muttered, "They don't want to see if we can fight. They want to see if we can be trusted not to." Vera absorbed the words, her mind racing. The Titan was a fortress, but it was also a sanctuary carrying generations' worth of fragile dreams. Everything rested on her choices now. The council had set the rules, and humanity would either rise to the trial or vanish into obscurity. The bridge quieted, as though even the ship itself held its breath. Vera's gaze swept her officers. Hale, rigid but loyal; Dale, composed but restless; the unseen Tan, feeding raw power through the veins of the Titan. All of the mirrors of humanity itself, contradictions bound together by necessity. "We came here knowing we would not be welcomed," she said at last, her voice low but carrying to every ear. "Let them test us. Let them doubt us. We will not kneel, and we will not break." A murmur of agreement passed through the crew. Fear remained, but it had been joined by something else, resolve, a quiet fire that burned brighter than doubt. Outside the observation windows, the Nexus blazed with alien light, thousands of ships circling in ritual or in readiness. Humanity had stepped onto the stage, and every eye was fixed upon them, waiting to see if they would stumble or stand. On the command deck, no one moved, but the silence was no longer emptiness. It was anticipation. Somewhere ahead, the trial awaited, and with it the judgment of the galaxy. The Aegis Eternal floated steady in the void, immense and immovable, as though daring the universe itself to deny its place. The summons came without ceremony. One moment the council chambers resonated with alien voices. The next a siren split the airwaves across every channel in the Nexus. Warning glyphs bloomed on screens, too rapid for the translators to pause before the truth revealed itself in the void outside. From beyond the outermost rings of the artificial sun, distortions rippled, tearing wounds in space itself. Through them pawed shapes that did not glide like ships but surged like predators. The Nor Hive had arrived, their vessels living things, vast carapaces thrumming with malignant light. Their wings were membranes stretched across bone-like spars, propelling them with grotesque grace. Panic spread through the gathered fleets. The council's grand convocation disintegrated in an instant as dignitaries fled their stations. Species screamed in frequencies alien ears could barely endure, and warships recoiled in cautious arcs. For all their ancient pride, none rushed to meet the threat. Vera felt the silence of her own bridge most keenly in contrast. Every officer stared at her, waiting, caught between terror and expectation. The council's decree had been clear. Humanity would be tested not by words, but by action. And now the test had arrived, clothed in the nightmare of the Nor. A voice cut through the tension, lead and cold. It was the crystalline emissary of the Tiraktun, its signal transmitted across the nexus. Humanity, you seek recognition. Here is your trial. Defend what you claim to value. Fail, and you will not be judged. Your extinction will speak for you. Hale's lips curled into something between rage and grim satisfaction. Of course. They'll let us bleed while they watch. They want to see if the Titan breaks. Then it won't, Vera replied, her tone ironclad. She touched the Comtan. Full battle readiness. Divert all secondary systems to defense and weapons. Lock the civilians into deep shelter. The engineer's reply came fast, tinged with exhilaration. Already on it, Captain. I've got more power than the manuals say exists, if you're willing to risk shaking the whole beast apart. Shake it, Vera said. But don't break it. Across the hangar decks, fighters were loosed like hornets from a hive. Human pilots, many of them barely seasoned, sped into the void with adaptive AI guiding their maneuvers. The Titan itself shifted, colossal thrusters flaring, turning its 12 kilometers of armored mass into the path of the incoming swarm. The Nor came like a tide. The first wave slammed against the Titan's shields, living bodies hurling themselves with suicidal force. Each impact sent tremors coursing through the vessel, shields flaring in violent auroras. The crew gritted their teeth as alarms wailed, but the defenses held. Rail cannons roared, spearing hive ships with tungsten slugs that burned like falling stars. Plasma lances carved arcs through their ranks, leaving molten carcasses adrift. Dale stood behind Vera, his hands clasped, his diplomat's voice unnecessary here yet his presence steadying. They are watching, he murmured, eyes fixed on the display of alien fleets sitting idle, recording every maneuver, every sacrifice. If we falter, they will say humanity was reckless. If we prevail, they may call it brutality. The narrative is theirs to write. Then we'll write it in fire, Hale said, commanding gunnery crews with clipped efficiency. He had no patience for politics now. Concentrate fire on the largest organism. Their starboard flank. Break its spine. The battle stretched into a nightmare of endurance. The Titan's shields wavered under the sheer relentless mass of living weapons. In the starboard hangar, boarding alarms triggered. Several hive vessels had latched on, their carapaces fusing to the Titan's hull. Marines surged into corridors, plasma rifles spitting bursts as the Norse spilled inside, twisted things that shrieked without mouths. Blood-stained bulkheads, but the lines held. Humanity's defenders fought with desperation born of knowing they carried not only themselves, but their entire species' legitimacy on their shoulders. At the command console, Tan's voice fled again, ragged with urgency. Captain, if I reroute life support from non-essential decks, I can overcharge the forward array. It'll drain us to the bone, but it'll punch a hole straight through their queenship. Vera hesitated only a breath. To starve parts of the ship of air was a cruelty, but hesitation would doom them all. Do it. Alert those decks. Every life is owed a choice in this fight. Lights flickered as oxygen was drawn from dozens of compartments, power bleeding into the Titan's heart. The forward array glowed, heat shivering across its surface until the metal itself seemed ready to liquefy. Then, with a command, Vera unleashed it. A beam lanced out, pure and blinding, tearing across the void. It struck the Nor queenship, piercing its grotesque bulk. For an instant the living vessel convulsed, shrieking on frequencies that cracked glass across the bridge. Then it ruptured, fragments scattering into the void like diseased ash. The swarm faltered. Without the Queen's command, their unity dissolved into chaos. Human fighters hunted them with surgical precision, driving them into retreat. The Titan's guns thundered one last volley, and then the swarm was gone, scattered into the dark. Silence reclaimed the bridge, broken only by the rasp of exhausted breaths. Casualty reports began to filter in. Hundreds dead in the boarding fights, dozens lost in the fighter wings, scores more suffocated in the decks stripped of air. The cost was brutal, undeniable. Yet they had endured. Outside, the alien fleets had not moved. They had watched. Now transmissions began to flow in, words of acknowledgement, of disbelief, of grudging respect. Even the Kroga commander, reptilian eyes alight, sent a brief signal, strength proven. We see you. Dale spoke softly, almost reverently. We were not meant to win. We were meant to reveal ourselves. And we did. Vera allowed herself a moment to sag against the railing, every nerve alight with exhaustion. She knew the trial was not finished. In truth, it had only begun. They had bled to prove their worth, but the judgment still lay in the council's hands. Set Kos back to the Nexus rings, she ordered, voice steadier than she felt. We'll face their decision together. The crew obeyed, and the Titan turned, its scotched hull glinting with battle scars. In its wake drifted the remnants of the Nor, a silent testament that humanity had not come to bow, nor to ban, but to endure. The galaxy's eyes remained fixed upon them, waiting to decide whether what they had witnessed was salvation or the beginning of something far more dangerous. The Nexus was no longer a place of ritual calm. The artificial sun still burned with its unyielding brilliance, but the silence across its rings carried a weight heavier than the vacuum itself. Where once alien dignitaries had spoken with practice poise, now they whispered, argued, and stared toward the battered Titan drifting into station-keeping orbit. The Aegis Eternal was alive, but its hull bore the scars of fire. Gouges blackened its flanks, shielding plates still cooling from the heat of overdriven reactors. It was not a symbol of untouchable might, but of survival carved through sacrifice. Captain Vera stood in the council chamber, a single human among giants. Her uniform was dark with ash at the cuffs, her voice coarse from hours of commands shouted over chaos. Yet she held herself as if the chamber itself bent to her presence. Behind her loomed holographic projections of her senior officers, Hale grim, Tan restless, Dale composed. They were her chorus, her proof that humanity was more than one face or one will. The Kroga Dominion's envoy spoke first, his reptilian frame shifting forward with predatory weight. Strength has been shown. You did not flee, you did not cower. You bled and you endured. The Kroga acknowledged humanity. His proclamation rippled through the chamber, part recognition, part warning. Others were less eager. The Tirak-Toon emissary tilted its crystalline head, refracting the chamber's light into fractured rainbows. Endurance purchased by recklessness is no virtue. They tore apart their own vessel, suffocated their own kind, all for the theater of defiance. That is not responsibility. That is desperation. Dale inclined his head respectfully, but his rebuttal was swift. Responsibility is measured not only in preservation of the self, but in the willingness to stand between danger and those who cannot defend themselves. Humanity risked everything, so the convocation would not fall. Is that not the principle upon which this council rests? A wave of murmurs followed, some approving, others doubtful. The Valorian envoy, still half-shrouded in gravitational distortion, drifted closer. Its voice was neither condemnation nor praise but something heavier. We saw sacrifice, yes. But sacrifice is a blade with two edges. You speak of guardianship, yet you wield your Titan as both fortress and spear. Humanity has the will to protect, but does it have the wisdom to restrain? The question hung in the chamber, heavy as a verdict. Vera did not flinch. We are young beside you, that is true. But youth does not mean blindness. Every world scarred by our wars has taught us restraint. Every child aboard my ship is proof that we do not build only for war, but for survival. The Aegis Eternal is not humanity's sword. It is our covenant never to bow again. If the galaxy mistakes that for conquest, then perhaps it fears the wrong thing. The chamber fell into uneasy quiet. Across species, eyes, compound, multifaceted, glowing, or veiled, fixed on her. Some were measuring her resolve, others calculating her danger. The council did not move as one mind, but as a storm of currents colliding. Then, at last, the chorus spoke. Humanity, by trial and blood, you have proven endurance. You are granted observer status within this council. No vote, no authority, but no longer in exile. The Titan is to remain registered, its movements tracked. You will be watched. And if your strength becomes domination, if your endurance becomes conquest, the galaxy will remember today and act. The words resounded like a sentence, and a reprieve bound into one. Humanity had stepped onto the stage, but with a spotlight and a chain. As the decree ended, Hale leaned close to Vera, his voice low and taut. Observer status. A leash by another name. Or doorway, Dale countered softly. We are inside the chamber now. That is more than any of us dreamed a decade ago. Tan's projections smirked faintly. And they are terrified. They saw what the Titan can do, even half-broken. That fear will keep them honest. Vera said nothing. She knew the truth lay somewhere between. Humanity had not been embraced, only tolerated, and tolerance could sour with time. But in the shadow of extinction, even tolerance was a foothold. As the session dispersed, a figure lingered near Vera. Neither crystalline nor reptilian, nor blurred like the Valorians, this envoy was robed in shadow, its features hidden by a veil of shifting static. Its voice reached her privately, low and unrecorded. Captain Vera, you wield a Titan, but do you know what it is? Her hand tightened at her side. It is humanity's shield. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is a relic of powers older than your kind, reshaped by hands that never told you their secrets. Your trial has ended, but the true test lies ahead. The Hive's attack was no accident. The envoy inclined its head, then vanished, leaving only static where its form had been. Vera returned to her ship unsettled. The Titan's corridors smelled of scorched metal and recycled air, its crew exhausted, its wounds still bleeding into repair logs. Yet as she passed through the halls, men and women straightened at her presence, eyes bright not with despair but pride. They had fought the Hive. They had not broken. And for the first time in history, humanity's name had been spoken in the same breath as the great civilizations of the stars. In the command deck, the viewport framed Earth's distant sun, a pinprick in the void. They would return there first, not in retreat but in triumph. For every scar on the Titan was a testament, every death a reminder that their survival had meaning beyond themselves. Vera stood at the railing, hands clasped behind her back. Her officers gathered, waiting. We came to prove we belong, she said, her voice steady, carrying through the chamber. We did. But we also showed them what humanity is capable of. That will frighten them. It will inspire some. It will make enemies. This is not the end of our trial. It is the beginning of something greater. Outside, the stars wheeled on, silent witnesses to a new chapter written in fire and sacrifice. The galaxy, vast and ancient, now knew humanity's name. And though the council had spoken, its judgment was not final. Somewhere beyond the nexus, unseen forces stirred, watching the Titan with intentions veiled in shadow. The Aegis Eternal held its course, engines burning slow and steady. Behind it, the echoes of battle. Ahead, a horizon of possibility and peril. The galaxy held its breath, and humanity refused to exhale. The Titan returned to the black not as a triumphant envoy, but as a scarred sentinel carrying secrets it could not yet voice. Repairs hummed across the Aegis Eternal, drones crawling over hull fractures, engineers in sealed suits patching scorched conduits, entire decks cordoned off where fire and vacuum had stolen lives. Yet beneath the routine of recovery ran an undercurrent of unease. Humanity had survived its trial, earned its first recognition, but the Council's acceptance felt as conditional as a blade balanced on a string. Captain Vera moved through her ship in silence, listening more than speaking. In the infirmary she stood at the bedsides of Marines burned by acid that no weapon had prepared them for. In the mess halls she passed families who hushed when she entered, their conversations too heavy to risk before her eyes. She could feel the question lingering on every tongue. Had the battle been a victory, or merely the opening act of something darker? On the bridge, Hale waited with a slate of reports. His expression was less the mask of a soldier now, and more the strain of a man carrying the weight of unspoken fears. Council channels are alive with chatter. Officially, we observers now. Unofficially, half of them are demanding restrictions on our movements. Some want the Titan decommissioned outright. Vera took the slate, scanning the lines without pause. And the other half? They are circling us like predators, sizing up fresh blood, Hale replied. The Krogar keep pushing for a military pact. The Tiraktun are calling us unstable. The Valorians, he broke off, jaw tightening. They want to put advisors aboard the Aegis. Advisors, Captain. To teach us restraint. Before Vera could respond, Soren Dale entered with his robes trailing like liquid light, eyes weary but unyielding. It was inevitable. The Council fears us more than it respects us. We bared our teeth in defense, but they only saw the bite. We will need to choose alliances carefully, or they will force choices upon us. Tan's voice arrived over comms, threaded with irritation. Alliances. We should be focusing on the ship. Half the reactor grid is being held together by spit and prayer. If another hive swarm shows up, we'll burn out before we can light our guns. And now I'm supposed to divert power to house alien observers. You can imagine how thrilled my teams are. The argument spilled across the bridge, Hale demanding vigilance against external threats, Dale pressing for diplomacy, Tan bristling over compromises that weakened the Titan itself. Vera let their words collide, absorbing the force of each. They were not merely disagreements but embodiments of the conflict now festering at the heart of humanity's place among the stars. Security versus trust, survival versus belonging. She raised her hand last, and the voices stilled. We cannot afford to fracture now. The Council is watching for weakness, and they will find it if we hand it to them. Our survival depends on unity, the same as it did on Ife. Her gaze lingered on each officer in turn, as though willing them to remember the covenant that had brought them here. But unity does not mean silence. Speak your truths, and we will forge a course between them. The bridge quieted, but the tension did not fade. Beyond the viewports, the artificial sun of the Nexus was already fading into distance. Ahead lay uncharted stars, patrol routes, and the long shadow of the hive's retreat. For though they had driven it back, no one believed the Nor were finished. Whispers filtered through the alien networks that entire colonies had vanished on the galactic rim, consumed in silence. Later that night, as the ship coasted on low power, Vera stood alone in her quarters, reviewing encrypted logs. Among them was the private message delivered by the veiled envoy in the council chamber. She replayed it, the static voice heavy with implication. Your ship is more dangerous than you know. The hive's attack was no accident. She paused the recording and let the words echo in her mind. If true, then the council had not merely tested humanity, they had used the hive to orchestrate the trial, perhaps even unleashed it. To what end? To see if humanity could bleed and still stand. Or to measure whether the Titan itself was the threat they feared it to be. A knock at her door broke the thought. Dale entered quietly, his robes dim in the low light. You don't trust them, he said, not as a question but as fact. I trust that they have their own games, Vera replied. And we are already pieces on their board. Dale studied her, then spoke more softly. Pieces can still become players, Captain. But not if we spend every moment looking over our shoulders for daggers. Humanity must decide what it wants to be in this galaxy, the shield that guards or the blade that cuts. Vera considered his words long after he left, the choice unspoken but looming. She knew Hale would argue that survival came first, that the shield must always hide a blade. She knew Tan would fight to keep the Titan whole, no matter how many compromises strained it. And Dale, ever the diplomat, would press to trade concessions for influence. The Titan itself seemed to hum beneath her feet, as though waiting for her decision. It was more than metal, more than the sum of its engines and weapons. It was humanity's vow to itself, and now perhaps humanity's greatest peril. Orders would come soon, she knew, requests for patrols, demands for oversight, perhaps even missions designed to push humanity deeper into conflict. She could not refuse them all, nor could she accept blindly. The future hinged on the balance between caution and courage, trust and defiance. When dawn cycle came, the Aegis Eternal shifted to full burn, engines igniting against the void. The Titan turned away from the Nexus, its path charted toward the galactic rim where whispers of hive activity grew darker with each report. The crew stirred once more, not in celebration, but in readiness. In the command deck, Vera spoke at last, her voice steady and resolute. We will go where they fear to go. We will face what they will not. Let them watch. Let them judge. Humanity will write its place in this galaxy not by their decree, but by our endurance. The officers met her words with silence, then with nods, then with quiet affirmations. The course was set, though none could say whether it led to alliance or ruin. Outside the viewport, Stars flared into brilliance, each one a reminder of how much remained unknown. The Titan pressed on, a scarred giant with the weight of a world on its back, and the galaxy, waiting, wary, and whispering, kept its gaze fixed upon humanity's first steps into its vast and perilous stage. The outer rim was a graveyard of forgotten signals. Long before the Titan's arrival, colonies had gone silent. No distress calls, no debris fields, only empty coordinates where thriving outposts once spun beneath alien suns. The Aegis Eternal drifted into that silence with engines muted, its crew braced for what the void might reveal. Even repaired, the ship bore scars like old wounds, and its people carried them in their eyes. They had endured once, but endurance was not victory. It was survival, and survival begged for meaning. On the bridge, Captain Vera studied the faint traces rippling across the sensors. The patterns were too deliberate to be random static, too fragmented to be standard transmission. She leaned closer to the display, brow furrowing. "Hive?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer was more complicated. Tan adjusted the feed with impatient fingers. "Not Hive. This is lead, encoded. Somebody's trying very hard not to be heard, except by whoever knows the key." Dale stepped forward, robes whispering against the deck. His expression carried that peculiar blend of hope and dread. If it is survivors, then silence has been their only shield. If it is not, then we are chasing ghosts. Hale's voice was harder. "Or bait. The Hive doesn't need to lure us, but the Council might. We're still pawns on their board." He folded his arms, gaze fixed on Vera. "You know they wanted us to come out here. You know it." Vera didn't deny it. The orders had been veiled in polite necessity. Investigate Rimward disappearances, extend humanity's reach, prove the Titan was more than a weapon. But beneath the veneer lay calculation. If the Titan broke in the dark, the Council could claim it had overreached. If it triumphed, they would claim its strength as their own shield. Humanity's fate, once more, had been tied to survival in someone else's game. "Lock onto the signal," she ordered. "If someone's still alive, we don't leave them behind." Hours later, the Titan slid into orbit above a barren world. Once, it had been lush. Satellite images from decades past showed rivers like silver veins across green plains. Now, only dust storms twisted across its surface. Yet beneath the dust, the signal pulsed, faint, defiant. A landing team assembled in the hangar. Hale strapped on armor with the grim ease of ritual. Tan checked the power reserves of the shuttle twice, muttering about stress fractures. Dale carried no weapon, but his presence was as deliberate as any soldier's. Vera herself led the descent, unwilling to send her people where she would not go. The surface was a wasteland. Towers lay half-swallowed by dunes, their skeletons exposed. The wind carried the hiss of sand against metal, the rasp of a world abandoned to entropy. Yet deep within the ruins, beneath collapsed arches, they found life. The survivors were few, gaunt shadows of their former selves, their skin marked by hunger and their eyes by suspicion. Human, and yet not of Earth, they were descendants of the first colonists sent to stake claims among alien stars, their existence forgotten by a homeworld too consumed with survival to remember them. Their leader, a woman named Arian, regarded Vera with the caution of one who had seen too much. "You shouldn't have come," she said, voice brittle as glass. "The Hive doesn't consume everything at once. It circles. It waits. It wants us afraid." Hale tensed, scanning the horizon. "Then where are they?" Arian's gaze flicked skyward. "Everywhere. Nowhere. You'll see." The words proved true faster than Vera hoped. The first tremor came through the soles of her boots, subtle as a heartbeat. The second was louder, rattling stone and loosening dust. Tan swore under his breath. "That's no storm." The Hive descended with terrifying grace, a tide of chitin and wings spilling from the fractured skyline. They had been waiting, watching the survivors like bait in a snare. The Titan's presence had drawn them into the open, and now the trap was sprung. "Fall back." Hale roared, plasma rifle spitting fire into the advancing swarm. The air filled with the stink of scorched flesh, the shriek of alien throats. Vera held her ground long enough to pull Arian behind cover. "We can't hold them here. We'll be overrun." Tan's voice crackled over comms from the shuttle. Engines primed, but I can't lift off with half the hive chewing the landing bay. You've got 90 seconds, Captain. The battle was chaos incarnate. Dale shielded the wounded with a broken wall, his calm composure unshaken even as claws tore at stone around him. Hale cut a path through the swarm with brutal precision, each shot placed as if he could will the outcome. Vera fought not with the desperation of fear, but with the clarity of command, every movement calculated to buy another second of survival. At last, the shuttle roared skyward, hive bodies peeling away in fire and smoke. The Titan answered from orbit, batteries igniting the horizon in a storm of light. Chitin burned, wings disintegrated, and the swarm fell back into the ruins. Safe aboard again, the crew watched the planet vanish beneath the Titan's shadow. The survivors, huddled in borrowed quarters, whispered among themselves. Some wept at the sight of a warship that dwarfed their ruined world. Others looked at Vera with something sharper than gratitude, expectation. In the quiet that followed, Hale broke the silence. That wasn't chance. They were waiting. Either the hive has learned patience, or someone told them we were coming. The implication hung heavy. If the hive had been guided, then the enemy was not only outside but within the Council's veiled games. And if humanity had been sent as sacrificial bait, then survival meant more than endurance. It meant unraveling who sought their destruction and why. Vera stood before her officers, the survivor's eyes burning into her back. We came here to prove we belong. Instead, we've uncovered something larger. The hive isn't acting alone. Someone is shaping the battlefield, and humanity is caught in its design. We will not play their game. We will find out who holds the strings and cut them. The Titan turned its prow into the dark once more, engines flaring against the void. Behind it, the ruins smoldered, another scar on a galaxy already fractured. Ahead lay truths that could shatter not only humanity's fragile standing, but the balance of power itself. And though the crew had no certainty of victory, they carried with them the one thing the hive and the Council alike had underestimated, the unrelenting resolve of a species that refused to bow.